Hello everyone, welcome to the Now What podcast, episode 7. My name is Glenn Sharp. I'm the president and CEO of Sharp Leadership Development. If you have been following the podcast, you know it's based on my book, Now What, that just came out. This is about one of my clients. His name is Johnny. Johnny is an amazing mechanic in the airline industry, and because he was such a great mechanic, they promoted him to manager of mechanics. Now what? Johnny has no idea how to be a manager. He has no idea how to do performance appraisals or counseling sessions or budgets or coaching or anything else that go along with managing employees. So it was my job to teach him and coach him over the 4-month period to get him on a level playing field with his peers. So one of the concepts in the book that I go over with Johnny is you are not alone. And this is something that is interesting as I coach individuals where they try to do everything themselves and they don't realize that the role of a manager is to manage the assets at their disposal, not to do everything themselves. So Johnny has a couple of leads, he's got several mechanics under his charge, and he needs to utilize the people on his team, especially his leads. So I'm going to introduce you today to the famous Situational Leadership 2 model from Ken Blanchard Companies. This is something I've taught at the University of Dayton Center for Leadership Excellence. I've taught this to my clients. It's been around for a while. It's all over the internet, but it's kind of cool how they break this down. But it also provides great lessons in regards to not only coaching, because it really is a coaching model, but also management and how to manage employees. And that's what we're going to really focus on, is not doing everything yourself and utilizing the assets at your disposal. So let's start off with looking at the model here. You see it has 2 separate parts. You've got the bottom part, which is the developmental levels of the employee. So D1, D2, D3, D4. And the basic premise behind the model is once you identify the developmental level of the employee, then you're going to select the corresponding leadership style or styles. And yes, you can use multiple styles. But let's focus on the developmental levels of the employee. And as I mentioned, the situational leadership model is based on situation and task, right? So just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at all things. But let's go through the developmental levels, and just for the ease of training, let's just go ahead and tag an entire employee D1, D2, D3, D4, knowing that it's really based on situation and task, but we're trying to get a good solid feel for what this is about. So if you notice a D1 employee, this is, for example, a newbie, somebody who is brand new to the company. Let's say you have a new hire and they come in and they're really fired up to have a job, right, and to get the job. So their commitment level is very high, but they don't even know where the bathrooms are, right? They have no idea. They don't know how to print in color. They don't know how to do much, right? They don't know where things are. So their competence level is pretty low. So let's say as a manager of people, you go ahead and assign them an informal mentor, someone that they can ask informal questions to, someone that will take them under their wing and include them with, the rest of the crew and make sure they invite them to happy hour or make sure that they are not sitting alone at lunch, but also check on them to make sure that they know what they're doing and they're developing. So you assign an informal mentor to this new employee, and you didn't realize that this informal mentor, even though they were good at their job, they weren't really a people person. So they were kind of putting down the employee, and they were ridiculing them and even being passive aggressive toward them. And you find that out. After about 30 days, you find that out in talking to the new employee, and you realize you made a mistake, right, in selecting this informal mentor. So you sit down with the employee and you can tell that they don't have much more competence than they did when they first arrived. And that commitment level, that spark in their eye and the fact that they were fired up is gone as well. So now that they've fallen to the D2 realm, right, they're low to some commitment and their competence is variable as well. It's definitely gone down, and now you're concerned because this is right there where most people either quit or get fired when they enter D2. right? So for D2 employee, now I'm going to coach them. Now I'm going to break them down and build them back up again. So I'm going to assign them a new mentor, someone who actually likes people, someone who actually has empathy and sympathy for a new hire, somebody who will really take them under their wing, introduce them around, make sure they include them, make sure they train them. And you'll notice after about 30 days, maybe even 60 days, that they're starting to really get their legs under them. That commitment level that was present when they were first hired has come back. They're starting to get very fired up about their job again. The competence level is getting there. It's not all the way there, but it's getting there. Now they would fall into the D3 realm, right? So they have variable commitment. It's not all the way there yet, but getting there, and variable competence, right? They're starting to really get it, but they're not there yet. That would be more of a D3. So let's say they continue their journey, they continue their training, they start to get lots of repetitions, they start to really get good at what they do. Then they would fall into the D4 realm, right? Where it's high competence, high commitment. These are your high potential employees. These are your people who are really, really good at what they do. That's a suggested journey. That doesn't mean you have to go from D1 to D2 to D3 to D4. You can go from D1 right to D3 and to D4. Right? That's just an example of how it would possibly work. And what I like to do is I like to talk a little bit about the fact that just because you're an overall really good employee doesn't mean you're good at everything. And if you notice, overall, you've got a D4 employee, and in the box you see all the different tasks that a D4 employee is good at. So look at all those D4s. They're good at all those different things. So overall, they're a D4 employee, but then maybe you ask them to speak in public, and then they would be a D2. Maybe they're terrible at it and they don't want to do it. That would be a D2 task, right? And then maybe you ask them to do the budget, and they want to learn how to do the budget. They want that skill, but they don't know how to do it. That would be a D1 task, for example. So again, just because overall you're a D4 employee, don't get caught in that trap that you are good at everything. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nobody's D4 at everything. But I like to show this visual just so that people understand that D4s are great, and there's no doubt about it. We rely on them, but they're not good at everything. Don't make that assumption. I want you to separate this developmental area from D3 and D4 in one box to D1 and D2 in another box. And I ask my audiences all the time in training, how much time do you spend on D1s and D2s versus D3s and D4s? And overall, they tell me probably about 75-25. I usually spend the vast majority of my time on D1s and D2s versus D3s and D4s. I asked them the question, what if you flipped it? What if you spent the majority of your time on D3s and D4s rather than D1s and D2s? Now, that doesn't mean you're going to ignore D1s and D2s, right? But if you're going to get everything done that you need to, you have to be able to establish a team. So imagine you put most of your time and effort as a manager into your D3s and D4s, and they now help you with the issues associated with D1s and D2s. How much more effective would that be? And let's go back to our graph. If you recall the red line versus the green line, it represents proactive versus reactive, but it also represents whether you invest your time or whether you spend your time. The green line would be investing your time. And if you put the time and effort in up front and invest in the right tasks, it will pay dividends down the road. So getting back to the situational leadership model, imagine a scenario where you train your D3s and D4s on how to orient a new hire. Right, so you train them on, we have a new employee, this is how you would take them through new hire orientation, this is how you would onboard them and take them around, make sure they understand and know everything. Imagine you have to, as the manager, you have to go off-site and you cannot be at your location because you were called for special assignment or something along those lines, and you have a new hire coming in. A D4 employee handles it for you in your absence, and because you train them, they do it the right way. When you get back, you actually circle back around and you seek out that new hire and you follow up with them and you ask them, hey, how did it go? How are things going? And you even give them additional training and additional insight. The new hire actually gets twice the amount that they normally would. They just don't get it from you, and that's the point. Imagine if you had a system like that where you constantly fed and you constantly trained those D3s and D4s, and they helped you with those types of situations. The key to management is having options. And if you don't have any options, if you're the only one who knows how to do something, then when you're not around, obviously that particular task doesn't get done. So having the D3s and D4s help you with those situations, help you with some of those tasks, is the smart way to do things. And it's the green line activity, investing your time versus spending your time. And as I present this to audiences, it's incredible to me the reaction that I get from the classes. You would think I reinvented the wheel and I invented fire the way they look at me, because it's the exact opposite of the way they were taught. Every single class, when I ask them, how much time do you spend on these two different blocks, tell me most of my time is spent on D1s and D2s. Now again, I get it, D1s and D2s need attention, but if you have a choice and you only have a certain amount of time, I would always select D3s and D4s. If you lose a D1 or a D2 employee, okay, they're replaceable. Right? And you don't want to lose them, but it's certainly easier to replace than replacing a D3 or D4 employee. Losing a D4 employee is like losing 2.5 people, as some of you guys know. They're the ones that actually do the lion's share of work. They're the ones that really drive productivity. I would argue they fit right into the 80-20 rule. 20% of my employees account for 80% of my productivity. So one of the things I want you guys to really consider is this, and I guess the question that I get asked a lot is, well, Glenn, how do I do this? I mean, right now I'm spending most of my time on D1s and D2s. How do I get from 25% of my time on D3s and D4s to 75% of my time on D3s and D4s? Well, the answer is training. Right? You can't do it right away. It's going to be a process, there's no doubt about it. And I always say to my clients, like, select a task that's not that hard, but it's time consuming, and start with that. Start with one D4 employee. And then you take another employee and you delegate another task to them. Next thing you know, you go from 75-25 to 60-40 to 50-50 to all of a sudden you're spending the majority of your time on D3s and D4s in order to get to that goal of 75-25. Right? And it's an amazing technique. It's simple, but it's so effective. It's also the common denominator in every single high-performing manager that I have had the pleasure to work with. The common denominator is they all spend most of their time on their D3 and D4 employees. And I would like you guys to consider the same. So if this helps you, I'm happy. I hope it does. I hope you consider doing something like this. At least try it for a week and see how it works. You'll notice that you'll have a lot more time on your hands. Opportunity cost, you'll be able to put your time and effort into other things because your D3 and D4 employees are taking these tasks from you and helping you out. If you would like to learn about these type of techniques, this is certainly in the book, but we also have a ton of other techniques in the book. If you haven't already, go ahead and purchase it. I think it'll be a fantastic way to get your managers up to speed and give your new managers an opportunity to be on a level playing field with the rest of their peers. So I wish you the best of luck in your management and leadership journey. I look forward to episode 8, where we're going to actually go over the counseling session. The dreaded counseling session where you have to bring an employee in and you have to change their behavior. So we look forward to that. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in episode 8.